Hello guys, welcome back. And today I'm going to be talking about Alexis Lafreniere and if he is a generational NHL prospect. Now Alexis Lafreniere is the consensus #1 overall pick in the 2020 NHL draft, and with his amazing QMJHL season so far, is he a generational hockey prospect? Watch till the end to find out. Now, Alexis Lafreniere is a special hockey prospect. We haven't seen a forward prospect this hyped up since I would say Connor McDavid back in 2015, and that just shows how good Alexis Lafreniere really is. Now, we've never really seen a prospect quite tear up the QMJHL like Alexis Lafreniere has at age 17 since Sidney Crosby back in his day in like 2006. But he's already been compared to guys like Sidney Crosby, already been compared to Connor McDavid, and those are already lofty expectations for just a kid who is 17 years of age. Now, Alexis Lafreniere is a 17-year-old left winger from a suburb of Montreal, of course, Quebec, Canada, and he plays with the Rimouski Oceanic of the QMJHL. And we, again, like I said before, we haven't seen a prospect tear up the QMJHL at his age in a long, long time, and he is showing generational talent, at least right now. So far in the QMJHL, his stats are absolutely ridiculous. He has played 46 games with Rimouski Oceanic, getting 30 goals, 53 assists for 83 points. And you also gotta remember that he missed 7 games due to the World Junior Championships with Rimouski, and that just makes it even better. Now, right now, he is currently second in scoring in the QMJHL, but right now he is not far behind. I think he's like at 1 point or a couple of points away from first place. He is not far behind at all, and missing all those games and getting that many points is certainly impressive for a prospect his age. Now, in the World Junior Championships this year with Team Canada, he wasn't all too great. He ended up playing 5 games and getting 1 goal, but he wasn't given that much of an opportunity by Tim Hunter, the coach of Team Canada, so I wouldn't look too much into that. But with his QMJHL stats, they are absolutely phenomenal, and right now, he is sitting at a 1.80 points per game when I am recording this, but even then, those stats are absolutely godly, and we just don't see that too much from the QMJHL, but Alexis Lafreniere is showing why he is such a good prospect, and the bona fide #1 pick in 2020. But to be second in scoring in the QMJHL, it's absolutely ridiculous. It puts you in elite prospect status. And if you're second in league scoring in your draft year, that is amazing stats, and you're going to be one of the top 5 picks. Absolutely. But putting up these stats to be second in scoring when it's not even your draft year is something that, again, we just do not see in the QMJHL. While it is a more soft league, there's less hits, there's more room for players to do that. We still have not seen this too much, and especially in the last 20 years, it is almost unheard of. Of course, we got Sidney Crosby that was lining up the league a few years ago, but Alexis Lafreniere is taking that same path and is just blowing out the entire QMJHL. Now, one of the reasons why he's playing so well for a 2020 NHL draft prospect is because he is a very, very old 2020 draft prospect. When it comes to his birth date, he was born on October 11th, 2001. That'll make a lot of people feel old, but he is just a month and a half, I think, from being eligible from the 2019 NHL draft, so he was just out just a little bit, but he's still an amazing prospect in his own right, and even though he was held back a year, he's making the most of that and is absolutely dominating pretty much anybody in that draft class. Now, as I said in my 2020 NHL mock draft video that I did a couple of weeks ago, I think the closest guy to Lafreniere right now is Anton Lundell. I would have him #2 in my mock draft, especially right now, but Alexis Lafreniere is just on a whole nother mile than Anton Lundell. Lundell being a pretty old prospect too in the 2020 draft, but Lafreniere has just been absolutely ridiculous, and the stats that he's put up so far, even though I do like his on-ice play, he is just doing ridiculous, and the points obviously show that. And even if he were eligible for the 2019 NHL draft, I think he would go #1. While a lot of people like Jack Hughes right now, I think it would be a different story if Lafreniere was eligible for the 2019 draft. I mean, putting up the numbers that he has, being second in QMJHL scoring, that is very hard to do for any player in the QMJHL, but he has done it at age 17, and I think how impressive he's been. If he were to be eligible for the 2019 NHL draft, I still think he'd be #1 overall for how well he's played. But of course, if he's going to be the #1 overall pick, if you were eligible for the 2019 draft, that just improves his draft stock for next year. Of course, with Lafreniere, he's going to play this year, he's going to play the rest of this year, and then after, he's going to go one more season in the QMJHL, likely before he's drafted, and he's playing in the NHL. But he'll have one more year under his belt, and it's going to be really interesting to see how much he produces, because right now he is at an insane rate, but I think next year we could see Lafreniere absolutely dominate the QMJHL and be #1 in scoring by far. But right now, the 2020 NHL draft is looking very, very good. And obviously, Lafreniere tops all of that. But you got a lot of fantastic prospects that have been playing their way throughout the CHL, the SHL, wherever it may be. There's a lot of fantastic players, at least as it looks like, heading into that 2020 draft, which just makes it more impressive that Lafreniere just has this big gap between #1 and #2. And how Lafreniere has played, I mean, it really translates into the 2020 draft for being so good. But even if you didn't have Lafreniere, that draft would still be a very good draft, but Lafreniere just tops it off and, again, is the star of the show when it comes to that draft. And this draft could end up the same way as the 2015 draft, where you got a guy like Connor McDavid, who is the generational talent, and you have a lot of fantastic players still there that have developing through that, but you still got Connor McDavid, who is the generational guy, and that might be the same case as the 2020 draft with Lafreniere. And while I'm not going to jump to conclusions, he is definitely the star of the show when it comes to that draft, and of course deserves to be, being second in QMJHL scoring. Now, when it comes to Lafreniere, I think the stats give him a lot of justice, but also watching him is an absolute treat. When you see him in the QMJHL, especially this season, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is his hockey IQ. He just makes every single decision pretty much a second before anybody else does on the ice. He's an absolute madman. It seems like he is just a hockey mind. It's just like he was programmed to play the game of hockey, and not many players are able to do that, but Lafreniere is just showing it perfectly as an 17-year-old. And in the QMJHL, we've seen that already. He also has a brilliant shot to go with it, a brilliant passing ability, and overall amazing offensive awareness. And if you're going to put up points like Lafreniere has, you got to have amazing skill, and Lafreniere definitely has that. When it comes to his hands, it's just brilliant. It's just pure bliss to watch him on the ice, especially when you look at his highlights. It's just, he can deke out anybody in the CHL right now. He is that good, and he's shown that in the past, and of course this season, of course, pretty much just flawless. And when it comes to his skating, he isn't as good as a guy like Jack Hughes, but he definitely has pretty solid skating in his own right. And even if he doesn't have that, his deking would make up for it right now, and he has shown to do that in the past. And of course, the brilliant shot that he possesses, just the overall offensive ability that he has is bar none. Now, I think the pretty underrated part about Lafreniere is, yes, while we might talk about his offensive skills for days and days, I think the defense is a pretty underrated skill that Lafreniere has. Now, I don't think he's the most gifted defensive guy, but he tries very hard, and that's something that not a lot of gifted NHL prospects do, is try hard defensively. But in the World Juniors, he did that. In the QMJHL, from what I've seen, he's done that. And the defense is something that I think a lot of people underrate and will underrate when it comes to his draft year. But obviously, when you look at his stats, it is a definite check mark. When you look at his overall on-ice dominance, it is a big check mark. But when we compare him to other first overall picks, especially in the last 10 years, how does he really compare? And is he really generational? Now, for me personally, jumping to conclusions with prospects is usually a pretty scary game. But with Lafreniere, I think it is a pretty safe bet that he will be at least a very, very, very good NHL player, and he obviously possesses all the things and all the tools necessary to be able to do that. But I feel like for Lafreniere to take that next step, it will be pretty easy for him because of his already amazing hockey IQ, amazing talent, and amazing hands. I feel like he'll be able to transition to the NHL nicely, and I feel like that will be no problem for him. Now, a lot of my opinion on him will depend on how well he produces in his draft year. He's already convinced me so far this season, but I want to see elite status in his draft year if he continues to dominate in the QMJHL. But I feel like for him to do that, it's going to take a lot of effort, it's going to take a lot of work. But for him to be compared to a guy like Sidney Crosby and a Connor McDavid, he kind of needs to improve himself in his draft year. And if we see him go on maybe a 150-point season or something crazy like that, that would definitely improve his status. And I feel like with Lafreniere, he still has gobs of potential, even if he doesn't hit something like that. But even then, to compare him to a guy like Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby is a little bit early in my opinion, but I feel like he still can reach that. And for me personally, I'm a big fan of what Alexis Lafreniere brings to the table. I think he's going to be a very, very amazing NHL player right off the bat, and I definitely see that happening. But it's hard not to be convinced with Alexis Lafreniere. He just possesses all the things you'd want in a hockey player. Smarts, you got amazing skill, amazing defense, an amazing overall game. There's really not a lot to not like about Alexis Lafreniere, and he pretty much just brings everything to the table to really be a complete hockey prospect. And at age 17, and not even in his draft year, that in itself is very impressive. Now, going back to the question of the video, and if he is actually a generational hockey prospect, and to me, I think he is as close as you can possibly get. When it comes to the definition of generational, when it comes to the NHL, I think it is the best player every single decade, I would say. I don't know if Alexis Lafreniere is going to be quite that. I think Connor McDavid is the biggest thing preventing that from actually happening, but I feel like Alexis Lafreniere will be at least an elite NHL player, one of the best NHL players, and I feel like at very least he will be a top 5 player. And I know that's a lot of expectations to put on this guy, but he has proven himself so far and will continue to prove himself, especially in his draft year. And while right now I see it hard to compare him to a guy like Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid, if he just goes out and dominates the QMJHL next year as a 17-year-old, if he just dominates everything next year, I feel like we can definitely consider him as a generational prospect and will be the generational prospect in 2020. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down the comments down below. So let me know what you think about Alexis Lafreniere. Do you see him being a generational player up to a Connor McDavid or a Sidney Crosby? Or do you see him being lower than that? Let me know your full thoughts on this prospect and how well he'll do. But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch a video on my February rankings for the 2019 NHL Draft. But that is going for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Alexis Lafreniere and if he is a generational prospect. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Goodbye.